Today's session in Geneva is the latest international effort to put pressure on the Iranian regime over its crackdown, which has already drawn international sanctions and other measures. Bob Rae is Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. He's in Toronto today. Well, Ambassador Rae, the UN Human Rights Council voted to condemn the crackdown by the Islamic Republic and for the first time create a mechanism to investigate crimes committed by the regime. How significant are these moves?
It's a big breakthrough. I think we were not able to get a resolution through earlier, which was really too bad with respect to China. But the fact that we've been able to do this on Iran is very significant. The fact that we're going to try to establish a new mechanism, as they call it, really means that you're going to have some very professional people collecting evidence, collecting data, and beginning to gather the material that we need to deal with the extent of all of the human rights abuses that we know are taking place in Iran. This is very important.
To do this investigation, though, sir, the regime isn't likely to support this, right? It's never cooperated with the UN Special Rapporteur for Iran. So how can you expose and document crimes with those obstacles?
Well, I mean, we face the situation in Myanmar, and we've also been dealing with it in Syria. And in both those cases, we have no cooperation from the regime in question. But at the same time, to my personal knowledge, we've been able to gather a tremendous, not only a tremendous amount of evidence, but hugely impactful evidence about the extent of human rights abuses, of crimes against humanity. And I think that it's important that Iran be brought into this world, because in the digital world we're living in now, there's no place for these dictators to hide. Everybody's got a very valuable way of getting evidence, and that's their cell phone. And we've also got far more ability to gather information from drones, from satellites. So it's a very different world out there. And so this evidence, as it's gathered, helps to point in clear directions about who's accountable for this and how do we deal with it. I mean, the wheels of justice grind very slowly, and it's very frustrating, and it's enormously heartbreaking for millions of people who are living in these dictatorships. But they do grind. We are getting there, and I think it's really important for people to know that.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was going to go with it. It's less about getting people into the country to do the investigation, because that may be impossible, but there is this abundance of video evidence, of photographic evidence, and that really becomes the way these modern investigations are conducted, it seems.
Yes, and it also, you rely on the fact that there are many people of conscience who work in these regimes and who have access to a lot of information. With the appropriate legal protection and ways in which we have of providing protection to people, we are able to get access to a lot of very valuable public data, government information, telegrams, information that's sent, emails that are exchanged, text messages from government officials. You'd be amazed at what we can get. And the important thing is to get it, and for that to be gathered, collated, collected, directed by a professional prosecutorial team. All those things go together. And as we get the tribunal set up, which is the next critical stage, we're then going to be in a position to hold people accountable.
The regime, the Iranian representative at today's session, probably not your surprise, criticized the Western effort, saying that the countries lack the moral credibility to do this, and claimed that this is a politically motivated move to distort the situation of human rights in Iran. What's your response to that pushback?
Oh, it's bureaucratic gibberish. I mean, people who work for these governments, sometimes you wonder how they sleep at night, because the evidence of what they're doing to people, and frequently they're afraid, they can't speak their own mind, they're told what to say. So yeah, of course they're going to object. But once you accept the fact that there are things called human rights, there are things called crimes against humanity, they're real things, they're not just political constructs. They they have legal force, and that you accept the fact that there are legal norms that should apply globally, which I think are very important fundamental principles, then it becomes very hard for the bodies like the General Assembly and like the Human Rights Council to pretend that they don't exist. They do exist. Of course, dictatorships don't want them to exist, and they call you all kinds of names because you say they do exist. But we take that in full step. We don't claim to be perfect. We admit to our faults and accept international responsibility and international accountability for what we do. But it isn't possible in today's world for countries to behave the way Iran is behaving without there being consequences for that behavior.
You've had this breakthrough today. There's also this other push to remove the Iranian regime from the UN's top women's rights body. You've got people like Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, Laura Bush, and Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister here, backing that effort. Where are things on that one?
Well, that'll be a decision that'll be made, I think, probably not until the new year. I could be wrong, but I think that's where that's headed. There are some, I think, differences of opinion about whether you want to expel people or whether you want people to be held accountable while they're there. And I think that's a principled debate that we can have. So there'll be a bit of a discussion about that. And then presumably a decision will be made either later this year or sometime in the new year.
So one final point, Ambassador, while these processes are launched and waiting to be decided, the protests endure, the crackdown continues. I mean, what more can Canada do right now to support the protesters on the ground in Iran?
Well, we can keep up our efforts to be very engaged internationally with watching what's going on and accounting for it. We can help people who are caught, trapped, who are struggling to get out, who are being chased down by Iranian authorities. We know that even in Canada, Iranian authorities are doing whatever they can to find out who's dissenting and how they can prevent that, how they can deal with people. So we have a lot of work to do in that regard. Plus, the sanctions that we're introducing and continuing to increase. I think the Iranian people need to know that they're not alone. The women of Iran are not alone, and that we're all working as best we can to try to support them in what they're doing and in their fight for change and their fight for democracy, and in particular their fight for equality, which I think is the key issue which is at stake here in Iran.
Okay, Bob Rae, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Good to talk to you.